Thanks for coming on, Hanoz.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure too. Uh, so I think it was last year that I came across news of someone starting up a little space in Auckland, uh, and which was pretty exciting. Um, and that's your space, obviously. So just to start with, maybe you could tell the listeners a little bit about your falling down the rabbit hole. I imagine you did at some stage, and sort of just briefly tell us how that happened.
Yeah, so the Altruist School is basically a product of my learning about Bitcoin extremely sort of quickly compared to most people. I kind of was asked about it by a family member in about 2020. Um, she asked me how it works and if I knew anything about it, because she was seeing a lot of ads on the internet targeting and saying things about Bitcoin. And I actually didn't have an answer, so I started doing some research myself and trying to figure out what it was and how it worked and things like that. Obviously, since it had been invented in between that time and 2020, I had heard about it quite a bit in different contexts, but I was quite dismissive about what it could be, like most people kind of are when they first hear about it, thinking you hear a lot of negative associations, right, like Ponzi scheme and these sorts of things. Um, but I decided to sort of do my own research and just started digging in, and I very quickly realized that it was a unique piece of technology. So, like nothing else that had been created, it wasn't comparable necessarily to stocks or any other tool that I'd seen before. And that made me want to do more research about it to kind of complete the puzzle in my head about how it worked. And at the time while I was going through it, it felt like it was very difficult to extract all the useful bits of information,
Mm.
just because you would have to reach a lot of different resources through different channels and kind of filter out the noise or the BS, if I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of that. So for example, you could be looking at it for weeks, and then after a while, you notice something that really sort of catches your attention, and you're thinking, oh, why did it take me this long to figure that out? Like, just one of the things for me was like learning that there was 100 million satoshis in one Bitcoin, right? I was I was on all these different websites and watching all these videos and things like that, but I didn't realize there was like a unit of account within it and what that would mean for it as a currency. And
Mm.
just realizing that made me made me a little bit more passionate about it because I could see the sort of use case there, and that sort of thing. And then kind of realized that within New Zealand and specifically Auckland, where I'm from, there wasn't anywhere dedicated to learning about this new piece of technology, and it was kind of obvious that it wasn't going to come from some sort of government source because that's not really something they're into. So um, my realization was that it would have to come from the people essentially, and like from the ground up, and if we're to educate the community and give people the necessary sort of understanding they need to be able to transact with it and use it safely, then we have to do that ourselves. So I just saw an opportunity there to kind of be at the forefront of that. And at the same time, I really enjoyed teaching people about it too. Talking to family members and friends and sort of being able to explain to them and dispel any rumors that they might have heard in the past and things like that. So I really enjoyed that process. So I just decided to kind of create a physical space for it, just because everything else previously had been online, and to give it kind of clarity and put it all in one room, everything sort of that Bitcoin meant into one space. So for someone else who wanted to learn about it, that journey could be a lot easier than what I had to go through, and all the other nonsense is sort of dissipated, and it's just the important stuff that you need to know to participate in the technology. And yeah, and then open this space with the help of sort of friends and family, and just digging into my savings and things like that. It was in August of last year, so almost 1 year now, and here we are.
Yeah, cool. And did you have
Yeah.
did you have another job at the time, or were you studying, or where were you at?
I was sort of like deciding what I wanted to do. I was working overseas in Singapore for a while before the pandemic, and then I moved back to New Zealand, and was sort of in between what I wanted to do in my next sort of career pathway. And then just kind of wanted to explore new things and that sort of thing. I was actually, funnily enough, when I started learning about this, I thought, okay, so maybe the most sort of like official way I could go about this is to become a qualified financial advisor in New Zealand, right? So I'll take the financial advisor course, get qualified, then I can teach people about it officially. So I started that course actually. So it's like made up of 3 kind of core papers, which is the first one's just the structure of the entire financial system. And the second one's like policy. And then the third one's investments, something like that. So after I did the first core paper, and I realized that there was not a single mention of the word cryptocurrency or the word Bitcoin throughout the entire paper. And it was outlining every single facet of the system according to them, right? So it was like credit unions and banks and
The legacy system.
depository people and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. They don't kind of acknowledge it at all.
Did you
And I
have
was going
a
through that,
finance
and then
background at all? Did you have a finance background at all?
no,
No.
no. I mean, I've studied business at university. I have a Bachelor of Commerce, but that was more focused on logistics and supply chain and like marketing and things like that. So not particularly finance. I've always been interested in it as on the side myself. So I wanted to do that and kind of get that foundation. And while I was going through, I was probably about halfway through the policy, the second paper, and then I realized like, okay, so basically, if I finish this course, I'm going to come under these regulatory requirements as a financial advisor. However, I'm not going to have picked up any knowledge or be able to talk about the thing that I want to teach people about. So I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do at that point, because it was taking me down the wrong pathway. But it was important for me as well to kind of see that Bitcoin or digital assets weren't a part of our financial system in any way, and just to kind of firm that in my head, just because then I can have that information to say, look, we need something like this, right? We need somewhere where people can learn about it, or who's going to do it, or are we just going to be living in the dark and people can get involved in it online, but they don't have anywhere to actually figure out how it works safely. So I thought, I have to do this. And it just felt like the most important sort of use of my time, whether it was profitable or not, wasn't really important, but it was like in this particular period in the world, with everything that's happening with our money and the way it's structured and that sort of thing, I just felt like I wanted to do this.
So taking it to kind of a practical level, when you were when you're looking for this space, what was your thinking around that in terms of, the actual location, and how hard was that to find the right spot?
Yeah, because like it's my first sort of lease that I've purchased or anything like that. It was definitely a learning experience through that whole process, and like talking to landlords and real estate agents and things like that. But it was an enjoyable challenge, and I learned a lot from that. So I went to a few different places, and when I obviously told the real estate agents what the business was going to be about and things like that, they were a little bit taken aback, and a few of them were just off the bat not interested in the idea. And then I saw this place that I'm in now, which was right in the heart of the city, right in the CBD, which I really liked because it meant that people of all parts of Auckland could kind of come, and it wasn't specific to any type of like culture or community or anything like that. And it was really open to the entire city. But at the same time, it's right in the middle of a really sort of high density construction zone, which is something they're doing with a new underground train station, which is kind of why I got it at a reasonable price for it being in the city center.
Right.
So those were kind of the trade-offs that I had to make. But I just felt like it doesn't really matter what's going on outside. It's just the fact that I'm here and people can access this place and come and learn about it, and kind of it's just planting a seed in their mind at the end of the day. Like whether they come in or not is not necessarily the most important thing, but if they walk past and see something about Bitcoin, then it's one more seed in their mind to make them do their own research about it and go away and figure out what it is maybe.
And so what's the size of the space? Like, I don't know if you would know in terms of square meters, but maybe comparing it to, I don't know, a cafe or something, or?
Yeah, it's 30 square meters. So
okay,
basically like a little, it's a box. It's a box with
it's
a big,
it's
big glass frontage.
Yeah, right. It's a humble little spot. Yeah. And so people are walking past, and I imagine you're the only one mainly who's there most of the time?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not really in a position to hire anyone at the moment, but I spend about 4 days of the week here. And my purpose is almost to some extent just kind of security for the place, because during the build up of it, I wanted it to kind of have all the information that I wanted to share in the space itself. So on the walls, I've kind of presented what I believe to be the most important parts of it, which is essentially like how it works as a unit of account, medium of exchange, and store of value. Because if we want it to be a form of money, it has to fit into those three criteria. So sharing about that, and then a little bit behind me, I don't know if you can see, there's sort of like a little bit of history about it. So just with the white paper, some information about mining, and then the price history and things like that. And then I'm just really here to kind of facilitate conversation. People have questions or need help with a particular part of the topic.
It's such a cool idea that you're sort of at the service of passers-by. So, you're not in the middle of, doing a particular task or whatever. You're basically, your primary job is really to be available for a conversation, which is, it's really cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who come in here, they say like, oh, maybe you should have like a little coffee station or something like that. And I see where they're coming from in terms of like some sort of utility for them. But for me, I could have started any business with the amount of money I'm spending here. It could have been a coffee shop, or it could have been a burger place or anything. But it's the importance of teaching people about this, which kind of goes beyond trying to make a few bucks through something like that. So that's the anchor of this place. And maybe in the future, if it comes down to it and I need to do something else with it, then that may be. But at the moment, that's what we're all about.
Do you get any regulars? Or is it all
a few
new
actually?
people? Yeah.
Funnily enough, the majority of the people who come in are actually people who already know about Bitcoin, and they just kind of want to talk about it or share ideas or discuss things around regulation and these sorts of things. Just because people who aren't familiar with Bitcoin are still under that perception that it is something like a Ponzi scheme, or like, what's this guy doing here talking about Bitcoin? He must be trying to scam me, something like that. So it can be a little bit frightening for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the people who come do already know about it and just wanna talk and share ideas.
Have you had any light bulb moments for people lately? Like,
There have been a
anything?
few. Yeah, yeah. I tend to like for the people who really come in at the ground floor and just haven't really learned anything about it, I just kind of bring out a paper and a pen and just start sharing different points and drawing different things and kind of helping visualize it for them, show them what a wallet looks like, just so they can kind of have that comfort of seeing it kind of physically, even though it is intangible. And just kind of explaining how the transaction works and things like that. A lot of people do. I mean, everyone who comes in at that level is bound to learn something new. It's just a matter of how much of it they can take in and keep in their head.
Hmm.
But there's so much to learn. Like even myself, I'm still learning new things about it every day, all the time.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of you just have to keep filling up your cup with that knowledge.
Do you get any? Have you had any negative responses or feedback?
Ah, I get some funny looks. I will say that I can sometimes hear people talking about it as they're passing by, like, "What the heck is that?" or all sorts of kind of derogatory terms. But I think it's like that classic thing, right? Like all publicity is good publicity. So whether they're looking at it in that way or any other way, at least they're talking about it and thinking about it. Um, and maybe it means their ego isn't going to allow them to come in and look at my space particularly, but they might go away and do their own research. So
Yep.
still an impact in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah. And I mean, if that's the worst that you've got, it's not too bad.
Yeah,
Um,
I just have to do my bit really at the end of the
yeah.
day, and I can feel comfortable that I was helping people with something that I felt was important.
So I'm guessing you've been running, would it be around 9 months now?
August, so yeah, 11 months. Yeah,
Okay, 11 months, coming up to a year.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what's your outlook for, say, the next 6 to 12 months?
Um, so a big thing in New Zealand, I think, is that in these sorts of like innovative ideas, I personally feel like specific to us, we don't really take too much of a leadership role. Um, just as an example, right? So in 2021, the UK launched a crypto asset inquiry, which they basically asked for feedback and um, from the public and submissions about what people think about crypto assets. And New Zealand launched their one 10 days after that. So it goes to show that's not a coincidence, right? Like within Bitcoin's entire 15-year history, that we launched our inquiry 10 days after theirs, kind of tells you that we're just following in the footsteps of our big brother. So I do feel like even in terms of regulating and policy and things like that, we will kind of just take the lead of our brother and sister countries. And the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, which is our central bank, has kind of come out and said that in some of the most recent publications, that we're going to see how the global space moves in the next coming years, and then make a decision how we want to position ourselves. But there's no stopping us educating people and advocating for it in the meantime, and kind of bringing more attention to it. But
So
for Bitcoin itself, internationally, yeah. Sorry,
I was just going to say, in a practical sense, in terms of your particular space, do you like? Is it still viable for the next 6 months, next 12 months, or do you have to change something, or make a compromise?
I essentially have a commitment here for another 1 year in this space, so I plan to see that out. Just because it is a commitment, and I told myself when I started this that, look, it's 2 years. I want to have as much of an impact as I can, put myself out there for the sake of my city and my community, and help educate anyone who wants to learn. Essentially, like, you can take the horse to the water, right? You can't make it drink the water. So I am the water here if they want to learn about it. But so I will see that out, and during that period, do as much as I can to reach as many people as possible through different sort of means of marketing and things like that within my financial capacity. And from there, maybe at that stage, pass the baton on to someone else, or work in the space in some other capacity potentially. But yeah.
That's awesome, man. I mean, it's such a cool thing that you're doing, and I think you should be proud of yourself for taking that risk and doing what you've done so far. It's setting a really great example for people, and it's probably going to spark ideas for other Bitcoiners in Auckland or around Auckland. I just had a question about donations. Are you open to donations?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I keep some like sort of merchandise and a little few sort of shelves of goods here for people who come in and feel like they have a good experience learning, gain some value in that sense, and they want to give back to the place. Then they can buy something which would help us at the same time, let them walk away with something. And then otherwise, if they want to make a donation, I have a QR code here, of course, for a Bitcoin wallet. But
the reason that I asked, Hanoz, is just because obviously the Bitcoiner community is a global community, and I did notice that you don't have anything set up on your website, well, not that I could see, and I'm just wondering whether that could be something you'd consider, and I could certainly help you, and probably other people could as well. But whether you'd be open to that, because I think it'd be really lovely for people who hear this story. They might be in Europe or America, to be able to help you a little bit.
Yeah, that's a fair call, actually. I did just kind of put together the website myself earlier this year, and I've just been playing around with it as to how I can grow it, so that I can see how that could be good to have a little page on there for that.
Yeah, cool.
Worth looking into.
Yeah, well, maybe we could talk about it later. But I think that could be a nice thing. Personally, I like when I see some project somewhere with the option to donate. I always like giving a little bit, and it's so easy when you enable Lightning. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, Hanoz. I think it'd be really nice to check in with you maybe in 6 or 12 months, just see how things are going. But it's a really lovely
Yes.
story to hear what you've done. And I think it's awesome. It's really cool.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And it's nice to see that other people in different parts of the world are interested in it and willing to hear my story. So thank you.